I'm a 24-year-old woman, and this happened 4 years ago. I was in my second year of college at the time. The area where my college and apartment were not in the best of neighborhoods. I heard gunshots at night once, and my neighbors across the hall from me got mugged while he smoked outside at night, not 5 feet from my apartment building entrance. The neighborhood was nice enough in the daytime, though. I walked along during the daytime with no problem. I would go to the local Quiznos to get lunch and make quick runs to the drugstore nearby almost every day. There was a shop right within walking distance, but it was a bit further away. We had to cross a bridge to get there. The bridge wasn't big, but it took us at least 2 minutes to cross it while walking. I had to make a run to ShopRite for essential stuff that I could pick up at the drugstore. I took my small rolling luggage bag so I could easily transport the items I would purchase. I told my roommates I was going to the store, put on my headphones, and left the apartment. I walked for about 10 minutes listening to music. Then I heard someone shouting. I looked around and saw that there was a man across the street from me who was waving at me and shouting. I didn't know who he was, and because my headphones were on, I couldn't really hear what he was saying, but he was obviously trying to get my attention. A gut feeling I had told me not to respond to him, so I ignored him and continued on my way. Confused, I looked back and the man was crossing the street and jogging towards me. I walked faster and could see that the bridge was getting very close. I walked even faster, and that's when I felt a hand grab my shoulder. For the man to have gotten to me that quickly, he must have broken into a run to catch me. In that split second I felt the hand on my shoulder, I thought of the YouTube video that I had recently watched. Jenna Marbles, a famous YouTuber, has a video where she says that if you make a really gross face at someone and continuously stare at them, they will go away. I turned my head and faced the man who still had his hand on my shoulder, and gave him the meanest, grossest face I could muster. The man was startled and backed up. He said something, but I couldn't make out his words. I made sure to continue staring at him as he walked away. I have no idea what made me think about that Jenna Marbles video in that moment, or why I had the crazy idea that the face technique would work when the man could have easily attacked me. Looking back, it was an awful way to handle the situation, but in that moment, that was all I could think to do. I'm so glad my tactics worked. If it didn't, I shudder to think what would have happened. I was 7 years old when this story takes place, and it is the most horrific thing that has ever happened to me. It was about 3 a.m. on a warm spring night in California when my best friend decided to come and take me on a late-night trip. This wasn't anything new, as he did this almost every night, but unlike every other night, I wouldn't be returning home from this late-night adventure. Shortly after starting our trip, we found ourselves on the dark, familiar trail we always followed. We had just hit the halfway point of our trip when we noticed headlights approaching fast. My friend tried as hard as he could to get us out of the path of this oncoming motorized personnel transportation unit, but sadly, he didn't react quick enough. Before we knew what was happening, we were both slammed into this heavy piece of machinery. Me being very young at the time, I didn't quite understand what was going on until it was too late. I braced for impact, but even that didn't help me. My friend and I were both viciously slammed by this thing, and I felt my body being ripped apart. The pain was unbearable, and I did everything in my power to save my friend. Sadly, he didn't return the favor. My grill was ripped off and my body was badly mangled. Now I can't sing the Paul Wall song, "Let me see your grill, baby. Let me see your grill." I felt the life leave my body as we skidded to a stop after the impact. I screamed in pain for about 5 seconds before my friend decided to leave me. I remember looking at him as he walked away from me, seemingly only worried about himself and whoever/whatever it was that struck us. I felt myself getting weaker by the second, and all I wanted to do was say goodbye to my long friend. Unfortunately, he didn't feel the same and left me to die along the side of our cold, hard path. The last thing I remember is looking up at the stars and wondering why this happened to me. As the red and blue flashing lights approached, I felt the last bit of my life leave my cold, hard body, and I just hoped that my friend would be okay. This story takes place during the summer of 2015. I am a 4'2" female from Western Australia. My home is massive, beautiful, and full of life. It was a relatively hot day, so I mostly lounged around under the leaves of a tall eucalyptic tree to stay cool. I was minding my own business when I heard voices rustling from a distance. I didn't pay much attention to this at first, but as they grew louder and closer, I began to worry and panic. "Crikey!" I exclaimed, as I climbed to a high branch in the tree to avoid being seen, but stayed low enough to keep an eye on whatever was making these terrifying sounds. "Crikey!" I exclaimed, after I caught a glimpse of the two tall monster-like creatures. As they began approaching the tree I was hiding in, I noticed one of them had silver horns sticking out of the fur on the top of its head. I was absolutely terrified as they stopped directly under me. "Crikey!" I exclaimed. I knew I had to do something to get them to leave. I released from the branch onto the creatures below me. I latched onto it tight and sank my teeth into its jugular. I then proceeded to tear out bits of its flesh and toss them on the ground. "Crikey!" The other creature let out a loud, high-pitched shriek and flung its limbs towards me. "Crikey!" I exclaimed. As it reached out, I caught a faint scent of what I can't quite place. It was a meaty, yet bitter smell. Then, suddenly, a strong waft of urine. "Crikey!" I exclaimed. It had marked itself, and the ground it stood on. "This must be the Alpha," I thought to myself, which means more will be coming. At this point, I knew I couldn't defeat it, and if I did, my home wouldn't be safe anymore. "Crikey!" I exclaimed, as I scurried off as fast as I could. I later found a new home. It is very peaceful here, and I'm safe from those evil monsters. I was 112 years old at the time this occurred. I have a big family, and we were all very close, never leaving each other's sides. Everything was perfect. One morning, at around 5 a.m., we felt the ground start to shake and heard loud, constant growls from the distance. It was daytime, but there was a heavy, dark, thick blanket of fog surrounding us. As the day progressed, the growling grew louder and louder. We were unable to move, unable to run. The silent screams of my brothers and sisters dying crowded my mind. I can now see big machines and men with chainsaws. All I can do is watch as these men slice through my family and watch their bodies fall to the ground, just to be picked up again and cut into more pieces. I became more scared the closer they drew to me, until, finally, my turn. Everything turned black. I still don't understand how, but I survived. When I awoke, I felt a tightness. I tried to look around, but it was too dark. Then, suddenly, I see a light, accompanied by a whirling sound. I began to feel a slight tugging. Before I could even think, I started to move at a very fast rate. Then a large piece of metal smashes into me, leaving a dark red substance all over. I must have passed out due to the pain, because I don't remember anything else from that night. The next morning, I awoke to a new growling sound and even more shaking. The shaking stopped for a moment and then continued on. I was just terrified thinking about how this could possibly get any worse. Suddenly, I was grabbed by something and hurled into the dark. I flew quite a distance until I landed on hard concrete. It was so cold, and I could feel a dampness covering my body as I made contact with the ground. It was at this point I couldn't stay awake any longer, and I finally accepted that my life was now over. This story begins when I was the ripe young age of 8 weeks or so. I never really had what you would call a mother or a father, but I did have some sort of family, though I am not sure my relation to her. Every day this beautiful lady would come over to feed me, and by that time, I was feeling very comfortable when she was around. Occasionally, she would talk to me, but most of the time she would be digging around, apparently looking for something. I remember trying many times to ask her what it was she was looking for, but I couldn't even make a sound. One sunny day, the lady came over to feed me as per our routine. However, she didn't bother to do her normal digging around. This time, I seemed to be her main focus. I was elated. This may be the first time I could try to speak to this wonderful lady that I have now come to know and love. She started reaching out to touch me for the first time in my short existence. I froze in anticipation for this long overdue physical contact. When I felt her soft, warm skin slowly caress mine, I nearly died right there. She ran her hand along my skin, and without warning she began to squeeze me. Not enough to cause pain, but it was definitely uncomfortable and weird. I seized this as my opportunity to try and speak to her, but I can't even remember if I managed to even make a noise. The next thing I know, she cups my bottom in her hands. I was in shock. I may have only been on this planet for 8 weeks, but I knew that this wasn't right. I tried my best to move out of her grasp, but I had no way to control my movements. I was starting to get really scared as her grip started to get tighter. Could she tell I was trying to get away? I didn't even have time to answer my own question before she started yanking me towards her. I felt an extreme amount of pressure as she wrestled to get me closer to her. And then, complete release. She hadn't let me go. Quite the opposite. Now she had me clutched in both of her hands while pulling me close to her body. I started to second guess myself. Maybe she was just trying to look after me. Maybe I would finally have that loving family I always wanted. But those hopes were soon dashed as she brought me into her torture chamber. At the time, I had no idea what all the shiny things were. I just remember thinking they were absolutely beautiful. How could I have known that these were instruments used only to cause extreme pain and mutilation? The lady lightly set me upon a hard surface, and once again clutched me in one hand. She used her other hand to grab one of the shiny objects, and started to bring it towards me. I really thought that this was going to be my first playtime. Boy, was I wrong. She started lowering this object towards me as I am trying to focus on it. I finally got a good look at it, but this time it had apparently shrunk in size and was nothing more than a thin something. She kept bringing it lower, and I tried to show her some form of gratitude. Unfortunately, I must not have been quick enough. Before I knew it, she had this object pressing against me. I couldn't move an inch as she began to force this object into me. The pain was unbearable, only made worse by the sound of my skin being severed by this sharp object. I felt a part of me lose connection with the rest of my body, but sadly, somehow, I remained conscious for most of this torture session. The lady didn't appear happy with only severing part of me. She wanted it all. Before I could even try and react, she slammed this object into me, repeatedly cutting through my skin. It was horrible. There was so much red stuff everywhere. I looked up once more at this lady that I had foolishly come to love. She stared down at me with so much hate, before plunging the knife into me one last time. And then, nothing but black. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. If you didn't enjoy the video, leave a dislike, because it's there, baby. Oh yeah. I know this is pushing it towards the end of April Fool's Day, but everyone does it right in the beginning and everyone knows what the hell's going on. So I wanted to add my own little twist, make people think they're watching a collaboration video, and just be an idiot in it. Big thank you to Lazy Masquerade, Busta, Corpse Husband, and Eden for all giving me permission to fuck around and make this video. I know a lot of these accents are way off, but that's because I am from the west coast of the United States, and I've never been outside of the United States, so I don't really know how to do the accents properly, but I can sit there and fucking say, crikey! I just added that in there. That's not even written in the story. My wife actually helped me write a couple of these stories. And speaking of, here's a great little competition. Some of these stories are written about random ass shit. Let me know down in the comments which object each story was written about. Obviously the one I narrated in my own voice is actually a story, so don't try to hammer that one much. That was something someone submitted, and I kinda took it more as a funny story. Whether it was even true, I didn't even pay attention. So I hope you enjoyed this special little video, because I was actually gonna do nothing but silence for like 30 minutes. But then I was thinking about it like a week ago, and I'm like, everyone's gonna do that shit. And then I get on YouTube and everyone does it. It's like fucking 11 minutes of silence, and it's just them sitting there. Fucking props to them, but I think you could have done a little better, homie. So I'm also sure a lot of you have noticed I haven't posted very many videos, if any, in the past couple of days. I really want to apologize for that. I have some family that came in out of town, they just got in today, and I've also been trying to deal with everything in my private life, as well as work on 3 or 4 collaboration videos, one of which will actually be with Rob Dyke. Pretty much all of us from the Brothers Grimm have been invited to participate. Every person with the fake accent you heard in here, they're gonna be in there, but the real versions. Maybe I should just tell them I'll mimic everyone, and then it can just all be me. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and when we get back next week, I'll be right back on track, so don't worry. And also, Sunday, I'm having a live stream on Eden's channel at 4 p.m. my time. We'll make sure to send a tweet out once we start it, but I believe that's also going to have Busta, Lazy Masquerade, Corpse Husband, Eden, and yours truly. And we'll be playing Cards Against Humanity, baby. So I hope to see you there. I'll catch you guys in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's poo. This story begins when I was the ripe young age of 8 weeks or so. That's Australian. Fuck. The lady liked me. The lady liked me. Fuck me. The pain was unbearable, only made worse by the sound of skin being severed by this sharp object. Oh my god. The pain was unbearable. Oh, fuck. The pain was unbearable. 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 The pain was unbearable. The pain was unbearable. Bearable. Why do I get unbearable? The pain was unbearable. Okay. The pain was unbearable. Fuck me. It was horrible. It was horrible. How am I gonna say this?